The sun had barely risen over the quiet suburban streets when Officer Brent Lawson pulled his cruiser into the parking lot of the downtown precinct. He was already agitated. The day had just begun, but his mood had been soured by something as small as a slow driver on his way to work. Brent was one of those officers who let his authority get to his head. He liked control. He liked when people followed his lead without question, especially people he didn't think deserved to challenge him. He slammed his car door shut and muttered something under his breath as he adjusted his belt. As he approached the building, a black woman stepped out of a sleek black SUV parked across the street. She was dressed professionally, dark slacks, white blouse, blazer, and a leather bag slung neatly over her shoulder. Her walk was calm, steady, and purposeful. She looked like someone with somewhere important to be, and she was. Brent eyed her. Suspiciously from a distance, he didn't recognize her. That was enough for his guard to go up. In his mind, someone who didn't look familiar walking confidently near a precinct couldn't possibly be a good sign. Instead of minding his own business, he squared his shoulders and crossed the street, intercepting her path just before she could reach the steps to the entrance. "Ma'am, this is a restricted area," he barked, standing in front of her like a human blockade. The woman paused, lifted her sunglasses slowly, and met his eyes without a hint of fear. "I'm aware," she replied. Her voice was calm but firm, like someone used to being heard and not interrupted. Brent didn't like that. He didn't like her tone, her confidence, or how composed she looked. "I said this is a restricted area," he repeated, stepping closer. "You need to leave." The woman took a breath and gave a small, almost amused smile. "I have an appointment, if you'll excuse me." Brent's patience snapped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the fact that she hadn't looked even slightly intimidated by him. Or maybe it was just that deep, ugly prejudice he thought he kept hidden but always bubbled to the surface at the worst moments. Whatever it was, his next action would change the course of his entire career. In a moment of impulsive arrogance, Brent shoved the woman backward with one hand, just enough to make her stumble slightly. Gasps echoed from nearby pedestrians. A few people stopped walking. One even began recording with their phone. The woman straightened her jacket and stared at him with a look that could melt steel. "You just made a big mistake," she said quietly. Brent scoffed. "I don't think so. I know exactly what I'm doing." But he didn't, not even close. Seconds later, the precinct doors opened. Another officer rushed out, clearly out of breath. "Officer Lawson," the man called. "We've been waiting for the new chief to arrive. She's supposed to be here any minute." Brent turned, rolling his eyes. "Yeah, well, maybe someone should have told me that before," the words died in his throat. Because the woman he had just kicked out, the woman he had shoved without a second thought, was now walking up the precinct steps past him, flashing a badge. The other officer's eyes went wide. Chief Wallace?" He stammered. She nodded politely. "Good morning." "Let's get started." Brent stood frozen. The air around him grew thick and heavy with realization. His stomach turned. His mouth went dry. He had assaulted his new boss. In broad daylight, in front of witnesses, and it was all on camera. But that wasn't the only story unraveling that day. Just a few blocks away, inside a crowded city bus, a young black teenager named Marcus was sitting quietly near the back. He was slim, 17, and kept mostly to himself. Raised by his grandmother after losing both parents young, Marcus had grown up fast. He didn't have much, but he had manners. And that morning, as the bus made its usual stops, something happened that would shift the course of his life in ways he never expected. A pregnant white woman boarded the bus. Her face was tired, her belly large, and she gripped the rail for support, clearly struggling to stand. Passengers around her kept staring at their phones, pretending not to see. But Marcus stood up without hesitation. "Ma'am, you can take my seat," he offered. She looked surprised at first. Then she smiled, genuinely touched. "Thank you," she said, easing herself down slowly. The ride continued in silence. They didn't speak again until her stop came. She stood slowly, paused in front of Marcus, and handed him a folded note. "Read this later," she said softly, and then she was gone. He stared at the note in his hand, puzzled, then tucked it into his hoodie pocket. At that moment, he had no idea that what was written inside would change everything. Back at the precinct, Chief Wallace was walking through the building she now commanded. Her stride was steady, but her mind was racing. She wasn't just here to lead. She was here to clean house. Years of misconduct, cover-ups, and abuse had turned this department into a mess, and she had been brought in to fix it. And Brent Lawson? He was now under investigation before he could even finish his morning coffee. Marcus, meanwhile, walked the few blocks to school, unaware that inside his pocket was a note that could open a door he never imagined. The city was buzzing. 2 lives, one in uniform and one in high school, were about to collide in ways neither of them saw coming. And what no one realized yet was that everything happening in that city, the new police chief, the teenager's simple act of kindness, and even that folded piece of paper was connected in a way that would soon shake the entire department to its core. But that's where the story only begins. Marcus didn't open the note right away. It stayed folded in his hoodie pocket for the rest of the day, crumpled beside a pencil stub and an old bus pass. He didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was just a thank you, maybe the woman was just being polite. After all, he hadn't done anything special, at least not in his eyes. He was raised to believe that giving up your seat for someone who needed it more was just the decent thing to do. But something about her expression. Before she stepped off the bus, it lingered in his mind all day. Like she wanted to say more but didn't dot at school. Things were just as ordinary and just as difficult. Marcus kept his head down. Teachers knew he was smart, but he rarely spoke up. Most of his classmates didn't really talk to him unless they needed help with something. He wasn't unpopular, just invisible. That suited him fine. His only real focus these days was making it to graduation. But even that felt far sometimes. His grandmother worked nights cleaning office buildings, and sometimes when he got home from school, she was already gone. He'd heat up whatever leftovers they had and do homework in a quiet apartment. But that day was different. Something hung in the air around him, like the day was just waiting to reveal something. And it did later that night. He finally pulled the note out and opened it under the dim glow of the kitchen light. The handwriting was neat, slanted. It read, "Your kindness today reminded me there's still good in this world. I don't have much time to explain, but I work with people who change lives. Expect a call, don't ignore it." There was no name, no number, just those strange, hopeful words. Marcus stared at it for a while. The note didn't make sense. Why would she say that? Why mention a call? And who were these people she was talking about? Was it some kind of weird prank? His first instinct was to throw it away. But something in his gut told him to hold on to it. He tucked it into his school folder and tried to push it out of his mind. But deep down, he knew this wasn't over. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Brent Lawson sat in a stuffy office, his jaw clenched and foot tapping with nervous energy. Internal Affairs had called him in after word of the incident reached them. Video from a bystander was already circulating within the department. Some officers whispered about it. Others just kept their heads down, pretending they didn't know. The chief hadn't spoken to him directly yet, but he knew it was coming. And the silence was worse than anything she could have said. He tried to come up with excuses, tried to frame it in his mind as a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. But even he knew it wasn't. He'd acted on impulse. And now that impulse had a badge watching over it. Chief Wallace, on the other hand, wasn't wasting time. She spent the rest of her day combing through Ricord's disciplinary files, use of force, reports, performance evaluations. The more she read, the clearer the picture became. This department had problems, and Brent Lawson wasn't the only one. He was just the first to get caught in the storm, but this wasn't just about bad cops or broken systems. Chief Wallace had a deeper reason for taking this post, one that almost no one knew. Years ago, before her career took off, before she became the chief, she'd lost her younger brother in a city not too far from here. He'd been stopped by police for something trivial. Things escalated. He didn't make it home. No one was ever charged. No one even apologized. That loss had shaped her life. It burned quietly behind her steady gaze and calm voice. And now, she was finally in a position to do something about the kind of officers who thought they could operate without consequence. That night, as rain began to patter softly against windows across the city, two very different lives sat with the weight of the day. Marcus lay on his bed, headphones on, eyes staring up at the ceiling. He kept replaying the note in his mind. Expect a call, but what kind of call? Who even knew his number? Then, around 11:37 p.m., his phone buzzed. He sat up fast. Unknown number. He stared at it, thumb hovering. He could just ignore it. Let it go to voicemail. But something, curiosity, instinct, maybe even fate made him answer. Hello? A pause, then a woman's voice, calm and serious. Marcus? He blinked. Yeah, who is this? I can't say much over the phone, the voice said, but I need to meet you, tomorrow, in person. His heart raced. Wait, who are you? You helped someone I care about today. And now someone wants to help you. Please, just meet me, Marcus hesitated. Everything in his life had been quiet, predictable, even hard, but never mysterious. This felt like something from a movie. Where? He asked. The woman gave an address downtown. A coffee shop. After school. 4 o'clock. Before he could ask anything else, the line went dead. Marcus stared at the screen for a long time. Before finally setting the phone down, he didn't sleep much that night, and neither did Chief Wallace. At her desk, long after everyone else had gone home, she scrolled through a list of officers still under review. Some names had familiar accusations attached. Others had clean records, but she knew better than to trust paper alone. She paused on one name she hadn't seen in a while, then she clicked into the file, and her expression darkened. The same badge. Number that showed up in a report from 5 years ago, an old file, long closed, had reappeared in a recent complaint. Different city, same behavior, a pattern. She leaned back in her chair, her jaw tightening. Something told her this wasn't just about reform. This was about digging up roots that had been allowed to grow too deep. And as the city slept, a quiet storm was building, one that would shake the foundations of the precinct, ripple through the streets, and tie strangers together in a web of truth, power, and redemption. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but already nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning started off like any other, but under the surface, things were shifting. Chief Wallace arrived at the precinct earlier than usual. The air felt thicker somehow. Eyes followed her as she passed through the halls, silent and sharp. Some officers nodded out of courtesy. Others avoided her completely. She didn't blame them. People often fear what they don't understand, and most of them had never worked under a black woman who wasn't afraid to challenge power. She entered the conference room and called a private meeting with the internal affairs team. Her voice was calm but pointed. She laid out a list of names, each one linked to reports swept under the rug. Officers who'd been written up for misconduct but never faced consequences. She wasn't here to play politics or make friends. She was here to rebuild something that had long been broken. And Brent Lawson's case, now officially under investigation, was only the beginning, but Brent wasn't going down without a fight. He sat in his car during his lunch break, scrolling through comments on a leaked video of the incident. Someone had anonymously posted the clip online. It hadn't gone viral yet, but it was spreading. A few anonymous users were already tagging the city's mayor, demanding action. His hands shook as he put the phone down. He felt cornered, embarrassed, and, worst of all, exposed. He thought about how quickly things had turned against him. One moment of arrogance, and now everything was at risk. He picked up the phone and called someone from his past. A retired captain named Harwood. Someone who'd once told him, "The badge protects its own." Brent hoped that promise still held weight. Meanwhile, Marcus sat through classes he barely remembered. His mind was stuck on the strange call from the night before. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman's voice, calm, confident. Almost like she already knew everything about him. Who was she? And what did she mean by, "someone wants to help you"? At 3:45, he slipped out of school, heart pounding, and caught the bus downtown. Every stop felt longer than the last. When he finally reached the coffee shop, he stood outside for a moment, unsure if he should go in. But curiosity won. The woman was already there. She sat in a corner booth, a folder beside her and 2 coffees on the table. She looked up as Marcus approached and gave him a small nod. "Thanks for coming," she said. He slid into the seat across from her. "You never told me your name." She leaned in slightly. "Agent Rivers. I work with a federal outreach program that supports teens like you, Smart. Unnoticed, overlooked by systems that were never built for your success." Marcus frowned. "How do you even know who I am?" "The woman you gave your seat to yesterday." "She's my sister," Rivers said quietly. "And she doesn't just hand out notes to strangers." He blinked, taken aback. So, what does this have to do with me?" Rivers tapped the folder on the table. "Your school records. Test scores. A few teachers who said you're brilliant, but too quiet. We look for kids like you. Kids with potential but no platform." Marcus stayed silent, unsure whether to feel flattered or suspicious. "I'm not here to force you into anything," Rivers continued. "But I want to offer you something. An opportunity, programs, scholarships, internships, paths that could lead far from this city, far from all the noise." He glanced out the window. "And what do I have to do?" "Just keep doing what you're doing," she said. "But be ready. We might call on you again." That answer only raised more questions. But Marcus nodded anyway. Something about her presence made him feel like saying no would be a mistake. As they finished their coffee, Rivers handed him a sealed envelope. "This is for your grandmother. Tell her we've met. She understand." Back at the precinct, Chief Wallace was reviewing security footage of past arrests made by Officer Lawson. One clip caught her attention. A young black man was stopped for jaywalking. Lawson's approach had been overly aggressive. No threat, no reason to escalate. But he grabbed the teen by the hoodie and slammed him against a wall. The boy's face in the footage, it reminded her of her brother. She leaned back in her chair, breath caught in her throat. Meanwhile, Brent met with Captain Harwood in a quiet corner of a local bar. Harwood looked older, slower, but his words were sharp. "You're on your own now," he told Brent, sipping from a glass. "Things have changed." "They don't protect guys like us anymore?" Brent scowled. "She's just trying to make a statement." "No," Harwood said. "She's trying to clean up the rot. And you, my friend, gave her a head start." Brent clenched his fists. "I won't go down like this." Harwood chuckled bitterly. "Then you'd better find something. Leverage or pray someone else screws up first." That same night, Rivers returned to her office and opened her laptop. A name flashed on her screen. Wallace. She paused, remembering something. She typed a quick message. "He's in the system. I met with him. You were right." Chief Wallace responded just one word. "Good." As darkness settled over the city, Marcus opened the envelope at home and found a letter inside, an official invitation to an elite summer program for underrepresented youth in law enforcement and leadership training. His grandmother stared at it in disbelief. "They found you?" she asked softly. He nodded. I think this is just the beginning." But none of them knew what storm was coming, because Brent wasn't done. And neither were the people who once protected him. Somewhere in the precinct basement, an old locked drawer was being quietly opened. Inside it, photographs, reports, names. And one of those names was Marcus. The web was wider than anyone expected, and someone was pulling strings from the shadows. The rain hadn't stopped all day. By evening, the city streets glistened with puddles, and the low hum of tires splashing through water filled the air. Marcus stood at the window of his apartment, watching cars pass under the orange glow of streetlights. The letter from Agent Rivers lay open on the table behind him. He hadn't told anyone at school yet. Not his teachers, not his friends. Not that he had many. But something inside told him he'd been marked chosen, and now there was no going back. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He let it ring this time, let it go to voicemail. When he finally checked it, the message was only a few seconds. Long, static, then a voice, low and familiar. "They know about you." No name, no explanation. Just that. It was enough to freeze the air in his lungs. He double-checked the locks on the door and looked over his shoulder, half expecting someone to be watching him already. Across town, Chief Wallace stood in her office, staring at a printed photo she'd found in the bottom of Brent Lawson's archived files. It was old, blurry, but the kid in the picture was unmistakably Marcus years younger, maybe 12 or 13. He stood beside his grandmother at a protest outside a courthouse, holding a sign that read, "No justice, no peace." She turned the photo over, handwritten on the back, "Watched." Related to prior subject. Wallace's chest tightened. She didn't know who had marked the photo, but it was clear someone had flagged Marcus a long time ago. Not because he did anything wrong, but because he came from a family that dared to speak up. This wasn't just about reform anymore. This was about a system that had been quietly tracking the families of protesters, civil rights advocates, anyone who dared to speak truth. She picked up the phone and called Rivers. "We have a problem," she said. "I know," Rivers answered, without hesitation. "Someone's leaking files?" "I think Brent's reaching out to his old contacts." Wallace's voice lowered. "They have eyes on Marcus." "I don't know how far it goes." Rivers didn't reply for a few seconds. "Then we need to move him. Keep him out of sight." Wallace shook her head. "No, that'll scare him. He's already halfway out the door. This could push him back in." "Then we protect him from the inside," Rivers said firmly. "But if anything happens to that boy, it's on all of us." Brent, meanwhile, sat in his car again, parked in the shadows of a closed gas station. His phone buzzed, and he answered immediately. "They're on to you," the voice on the other end said. "Your name's on her list. You need to bury her. With something fast." "I've got a file," Brent said. "From the old days. Kid's name is Marcus. They're grooming him for something. She's protecting him. That could be leverage." There was a pause, then, "Use it. You only get one shot at this." Brent hung up, wiped his face with his sleeve, and stared out into the empty street. The next day at school, Marcus noticed two unfamiliar men parked across the street, unmarked sedan, tinted windows. They didn't look like anyone's parents. They weren't dressed like cops, but he could feel their eyes. He mentioned it to his guidance counselor, who told him not to worry. Maybe it was just security patrol. But Marcus had seen enough in his life to know the difference between casual and calculated. When he got home, his grandmother was waiting by the door, holding the letter from the youth program. Her eyes were full of worry now, not pride. "Are you sure these people are who they say they are?" she asked softly. "I think so," Marcus replied. "But I don't know what's happening anymore." That night, Rivers showed up at their apartment, no warning. Just a soft knock on the door, and her steady voice asking to come in. She didn't smile much, but her tone stayed warm. "We've got reason to believe someone's been watching you," she said calmly, her eyes flicking between Marcus and his grandmother. "We're going to keep you safe, but I need you to be honest with me. Has anyone followed you? Approached you? Made threats?" Marcus hesitated. "There was a message. Last night. Can I hear it?" He nodded and played the voicemail. Rivers listened, then slipped her phone from her coat and began texting furiously. Outside, headlights passed slowly by the building, then stopped. A beat? Then drove off again, across the precinct. Chief Wallace had called for a department-wide audit of all body cam footage related to officers flagged in her investigation. Files that had once been locked or marked internal only were now on her desk. She worked late into the night, going frame by frame. And in one video from nearly 6 years ago, she saw something she couldn't ignore. The same retired Captain Brent had called Harwood appeared on camera, confronting a group of peaceful protesters, and behind him, half hiding in the crowd, was a younger Marcus, clutching his grandmother's hand. Wallace froze the footage and leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. Why had this child appeared in so many files? Why had his name surfaced in past surveillance reports? This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had been building a profile on him for years. Not because he was dangerous, but because they feared what he might become. Outside, the storm rolled back in. Thunder echoed in the distance, and somewhere in the shadows, Brent made his next move. He uploaded a video. Grainy, edited to distort the truth of Marcus at one of the protests, cutting clips to make him look like an agitator. Then he attached a forged police report. The title read, "Person of Interest, Youth Radicalization." He sent it anonymously to a media outlet, then he waited. By the next morning, the story had broken. Social media buzzed. Comment threads filled with arguments. Some people defended Marcus. Others demanded answers. News trucks showed up outside his school. And inside that chaos, Chief Wallace realized something far worse was unfolding. This wasn't just about silencing Marcus. This was a distraction. Someone was trying to bait her. To make her choose between protecting the boy or protecting the department, but Wallace wasn't going to break that easily. Not now. Not when she was finally getting close to the truth, and not when someone had just tried to rewrite Marcus's future with a lie. True leadership is not about power, it's about protecting those who have none. When injustice hides behind a badge or authority, it takes courage, integrity, and humanity to expose it. One act of kindness, like a teen giving up his seat, can set off a chain reaction that challenges corruption and sparks change. And no matter how deep injustice runs, truth always has a way of rising, especially when good people refuse to stay silent. Enjoyed the story? Hit that like button, subscribe for more, and tell us what you think in the comments.